You know those people who just vanish from the corporate ladder? Not in some dramatic quit my job and travel the world Instagram post kind of way, but quietly. One day they're climbing, networking, optimizing their LinkedIn profile, and then they're just gone, living in a smaller house, working fewer hours, driving an older car. And somehow they seem weirdly okay with it. While most people are grinding harder, adding certifications, angling for the next promotion, there's this entire group of people who've just quietly stepped off the treadmill. And according to research from the University of Bath published in 2023, their brains might actually process reward and status differently than the people still racing. Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will completely change how you see success, ambition, and what it actually means to win. Let's start with why most people stay in the race, because here's the thing: the rat race isn't some conspiracy. It's deeply, almost beautifully aligned with how human brains evolved. Your brain has this ancient system called the mesolimbic pathway. It's your reward circuit, and it lights up like a Christmas tree when you get promoted, when your salary increases, when someone important validates your achievement. A 2019 study from Cornell University found that status rewards activate the same neural pathways as food, sex, and addictive substances. Your brain literally treats a job title upgrade like a hit of dopamine. But it goes deeper than that. We're tribal creatures. For 300,000 years, your survival depended on your position in the social hierarchy. Higher status meant better mates, more resources, protection from the group. So your brain evolved to be obsessed with climbing. It's not shallow, it's survival instinct dressed in a business suit. And modern capitalism? It's built a near perfect dopamine delivery system. Small wins, constant feedback loops, visible metrics. You hit your quarterly target, you get a bonus. The bonus funds a lifestyle upgrade. The lifestyle upgrade requires the next bonus. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill, and research from Princeton University shows that it keeps resetting your baseline for what feels like enough. So most people aren't weak or brainwashed for staying in the race. They're just following 300,000 years of evolutionary programming that says climb higher, earn more, gain status, secure your position. Their brains are working exactly as designed. But then there are the others, the people who get to a certain point on the ladder and just step off, not down, not up, off. They take the job with better hours and worse titles. They move to the cheaper city. They stop caring about the metrics that used to define them. And from the outside, it looks like they've given up. Except they haven't. Here's what nobody tells you: their brains might actually be processing the same information differently. A fascinating 2021 study from the London School of Economics tracked people who voluntarily downshifted their careers. What they found was striking. These individuals showed different patterns of activation in the prefrontal cortex when evaluating trade-offs between money and time, status and autonomy. Essentially, when most people's brains see more money, the reward centers fire. But for the quiet exiters, the activation was muted, not absent, muted. Like their brains had somehow recalibrated what registers as rewarding. Now, before the comment section explodes, this isn't about one brain being superior. Both are valid responses to modern life. But understanding why some brains make this shift is where things get really interesting. For most people who quietly exit the race, there's a moment, not always dramatic, often subtle, but a moment when the equation changes. Sometimes it's burnout. Dr. Christina Maslach's research at UC Berkeley on occupational burnout shows that chronic workplace stress literally reshapes your brain's threat detection systems. After enough years of high-pressure performance, your amygdala, that ancient alarm system, starts treating your inbox like a predator. The rat race stops feeling like progress and starts feeling like survival. Sometimes it's a health scare. You're 42, and your doctor uses words like pre-diabetic or stress-induced hypertension. Suddenly, the corner office feels less like an achievement and more like a slow-motion suicide. Sometimes it's watching a parent die with regrets, sitting in a hospital room while your father whispers that he wishes he'd worked less, traveled more, known his grandkids, and something in your brain just clicks. But here's what's fascinating. According to research from the Journal of Positive Psychology published in 2020, the people who successfully exit the race often share a specific cognitive trait. They score higher on what psychologists call temporal discounting flexibility. Basically, their brains are better at valuing future well-being over immediate status gains. Most human brains heavily discount the future. A reward today is worth way more than the same reward tomorrow. It's why we eat the cookie, skip the gym, take the promotion that'll wreck our health in 5 years. But some brains, either through genetics, experience, or conscious rewiring, can actually feel future you as vividly as present you. When they imagine themselves at 65, exhausted and wealthy, it feels real enough to compete with the dopamine hit of today's achievement. That's not weakness. That's a different kind of intelligence. Let's talk about what goes into the decision to exit, because it's not simple. It's not just work less, stress less. There's a complex psychological equation happening. First, there's identity dissolution. Your job title has been your answer to what do you do for years, maybe decades. It's how you introduce yourself at parties, how you measure yourself against old classmates, how you know if you're winning. A 2018 study from the University of Michigan found that career identity is so deeply embedded that losing it triggers the same neural patterns as grief. When you step off the ladder, you have to answer the question, who am I if I'm not climbing? Second, there's social pressure. Your brain is wired to care what the tribe thinks. When you downshift, you're violating the social contract. People will ask if you're okay, if you got fired, if you're having a crisis. Their concern is genuine, but it's also an immune response. You're deviating from the script, and that makes people uncomfortable. Research from Yale University shows that people who make unconventional life choices often face what psychologists call social comparison anxiety. You're at the dinner party, and someone asks what you're up to. You say you're working part-time so you can garden and read. The conversation gets weird, because you've just reminded everyone else that they made different choices, and maybe those choices aren't making them happy. Third, there's financial fear. Real, legitimate fear. You're earning less, saving less. Your retirement projections look different. What if you're making a massive mistake? What if future you is broke and bitter? Studies from the Financial Psychology Center show that downshifters report higher anxiety about money even when their actual financial situation is stable, because they've lost the upward trajectory that felt like safety. And fourth, there's the loss of the game itself. Here's something that sounds contradictory, but stay with me. Some people actually miss the stress. They miss the clear metrics, the competition, the adrenaline of high-stakes performance. Research on achievement motivation shows that high performers often get addicted not just to the rewards, but to the challenge itself. When you exit the race, you lose that structure, that clarity, that sense of measurable progress. So the quiet exiters aren't escaping into some blissful, stress-free paradise. They're trading one set of problems for a completely different set. Here's where things take a turn. You'd think people who exit the race would be happier, right? Less stress, more time, more autonomy, and some studies show exactly that. Research from the University of Oxford found that people who prioritize time over money report higher life satisfaction. But then there's this other body of research. A 2022 study from Stanford followed people who downshifted their careers for 5 years. And what they found was more complex. Yes, these people reported lower stress. Yes, they had better work-life balance. But they also reported something unexpected, a kind of existential anxiety. Without the external structure of achievement, they had to figure out what actually mattered to them. And that's terrifying. When you're in the race, your goals are clear. Make more money, get promoted, hit the targets. But when you step off, you have to decide what you're optimizing for. And most people have never actually asked themselves that question. Some people discover they were using career achievement to avoid deeper questions about meaning and purpose. The race was a distraction from the fact that they didn't know what they actually wanted from life. So when they exit, they don't find peace. They find themselves face to face with questions they've been running from. Others find something different. They discover that without the constant dopamine hits of achievement, they have to learn how to be okay with less stimulation, less validation, less proof that they matter. And that's a genuinely difficult psychological adjustment. Dr. Laurie Santos at Yale calls this hedonic adaptation in reverse. You're teaching your brain to find reward in things that don't trigger the same neural fireworks. It's retraining your entire reward system. And it's hard. But here's what people who successfully exit the race often discover: a completely different kind of freedom. They're no longer making decisions based on what looks impressive to other people. They're making decisions based on what actually feels good to them. And that shift, according to research on self determination theory from the University of Rochester, is associated with higher intrinsic motivation and sustained well being. When you're in the race, you're always comparing, always measuring, always checking if you're ahead or behind. But when you exit, you lose the scoreboard. And without the scoreboard, you have to develop internal measures of success. Did I spend time on things that mattered? Did I show up for the people I love? Did I feel present in my own life? These sound like platitudes until you actually live them. Then they become radical. People who exit often develop what psychologists call locus of control flexibility. They stop needing external validation to know if they're doing okay. They trust their own judgment more. They're less reactive to other people's opinions, not because they don't care what anyone thinks, but because they've done the hard work of figuring out what they think. And here's something beautiful. Many of them report experiencing time differently. When you're in the race, time is a resource you're constantly running out of. It's the enemy. It's what you're trying to hack and optimize and maximize. But when you exit, time can become something else, a space to inhabit, a medium for living. Research from the Journal of Happiness Studies shows that people who work fewer hours report experiencing time as moving more slowly, not in a boring way, in a present way. They notice seasons changing, they remember their weeks, they feel less like they're skimming across the surface of their own lives. Let me tell you something that'll mess with you. People who quietly exit the race aren't necessarily born different. Many of them train their brains to want different things. Through deliberate practice, through exposure to different values, through enough pain that the old equations stopped making sense. A 2023 study from the University of Pennsylvania looked at neuroplasticity in adults who made major lifestyle changes. What they found was that with sustained effort, people could actually reshape their reward pathways. The things that used to light up their brains, status symbols, competitive wins, started producing less activation. And the things that barely registered before, time in nature, deep conversation, creative projects, started producing more. You can literally rewire what feels rewarding, but it's not easy. It's not a decision you make once, it's a decision you make every day. Every time you choose time over money, every time you disappoint someone's expectations. Every time you resist the urge to compare yourself to the people still racing, you're fighting against 300,000 years of evolution that says, climb higher. And that takes a very specific kind of courage. Here's what nobody tells you about the people who quietly exit the race. They're not giving up. They're choosing a harder game. The race has clear rules, clear metrics, clear ways to know if you're winning. But the life after the race? That's ambiguous. That's uncertain. That's a game where you have to define the rules yourself. And that takes more psychological strength than most people realize. These are people who can tolerate the discomfort of other people's judgment, who can sit with financial anxiety without letting it drive every decision, who can face existential questions about meaning and purpose without running back to the safety of achievement metrics, who can rebuild their identity from scratch not around what they do, but around who they are. That's not weakness. That's not failure. That's a kind of emotional resilience that most people never develop because they never have to. So if you're someone who's quietly exited the race or thinking about it, here's what you need to hear. You're not broken. You're not unmotivated. You're not settling or giving up or failing to reach your potential. Your brain has just recalibrated what it considers rewarding. And that recalibration might be the most intelligent thing you've ever done. You're not broken, you're trained. Trained by experience, by values, by a vision of a good life that doesn't fit the standard template. And that training is valuable even when it's lonely. The people still in the race aren't wrong. They're following valid evolutionary drives toward security and status. But you're following something else, a drive toward autonomy, toward presence, toward a life that feels like yours. Both are legitimate. Neither is superior. They're just different optimization strategies for different values. And if you're struggling with it, if you're anxious about money or identity or what people think, that doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It means you're human. You're navigating a path that doesn't have a map. That's supposed to be hard. But you're not alone in it. There's a whole quiet community of people who've made the same choice, who understand the trade-offs, who know what it costs to step off the treadmill, and who've decided that what they gain, time, autonomy, presence, peace, is worth what they lose. That's not just psychology. That's poetry in motion. The rat race will always be there. The ladder will always exist. And some part of you might always wonder if you should climb back on. But here's the thing, you can't unknow what you know now. You can't unfeel the relief of stepping off. You can't unlearn the fact that there are other ways to measure a life well lived. So if this resonated with you, if you're one of the quiet exiters or thinking about becoming one, know this: your hesitation is wisdom, your anxiety is awareness, your choice to prioritize time over status, presence over achievement, peace over performance. That's not failure, that's evolution. If you found yourself in this video, consider checking out my next one on the psychology of people who need very little to be happy. And if you want to support this channel and get early access to videos like this, there's a join button below. Either way, thanks for being here. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not missing out on some fundamental human drive. You're just playing a different game. And maybe, just maybe, you're winning.